Have you ever left a conversation wondering, what is wrong with that person? Maybe it was a coworker who never stops talking but says nothing. Or that one boss who's always barking orders like he's in a war zone. Or perhaps it's someone who just won't ever make a decision, like their brain is stuck in molasses. Here's the twist. They might be thinking the exact same thing about you. The problem isn't that we're surrounded by idiots. The problem is that we misunderstand how people are wired. And that misunderstanding costs us relationships, productivity, and peace of mind. In this video, we're diving deep into Thomas Erikson's explosive bestseller, Surrounded by Idiots. You'll discover how one simple color-coded model can decode human behavior, transform your communication, and help you stop pulling your hair out in frustration. Stick around, because once you learn the red, yellow, green, and blue personalities, you'll never see people the same way again. Part 1. The communication breakdown. Why we talk past each other. You've probably had moments where you're explaining something clearly, only to be met with blank stares or complete misunderstanding. You were sure your words made sense, so what went wrong? Thomas Erikson starts with a foundational truth. Communication doesn't happen on your terms. It happens on the listener's. Every person receives information through their own mental filter, shaped by their personality, values, biases, and experiences. This means that even the most precisely worded message can be interpreted in completely unintended ways. Think of it like this. You're broadcasting on one frequency, but your listener's radio is tuned to another. Unless you learn to adjust your signal, you'll always get static. This is why frustration builds at work, in relationships, and in everyday conversations. The solution? Behavioral flexibility, understanding how different people process information and adapting your approach accordingly. This is where the four-color model comes in, a simple yet powerful tool to decode people's behavioral preferences and communicate with clarity, empathy, and precision. Part 2. The four colors, a map of human behavior. Thomas Erikson introduces the DISM model, a framework that categorizes people into four color-based behavioral types. Red, dominance, goal-oriented, driven, assertive. Yellow, influence, enthusiastic, social, inspirational. Green, stability, patient, consistent, supportive. Blue, conscientiousness, analytical, precise, detail-focused. Each person leans toward one or two dominant types, but may show traits from others in different settings. These color-coded styles help us anticipate how people prefer to communicate, make decisions, handle conflict, and even think. Think of the four colors as languages. Red speak action, yellows speak emotion, greens speak harmony, blues speak logic. You can't speak French to someone who only understands Japanese and expect results. In the same way, if you approach a green like a red, fast, forceful, and confrontational, you'll trigger anxiety instead of collaboration. Understanding this model isn't about boxing people in. It's about learning to meet them where they are, not where you are. Part 3. The Reds fast, fierce, focused. Meet the Reds, the go-getters, decision-makers, and natural-born leaders. When a Red walks into a room, they make their presence known. Not because they seek attention, but because they radiate energy and urgency. Reds are driven by results. They value efficiency, speed, and clarity. In meetings, they cut to the chase. In conflict, they confront directly. And in leadership, they demand action. Typical traits of Reds: bold and confident, decisive, even under pressure, competitive and self-motivated. Dislike small talk and delays. They can be inspiring leaders, but may come off as intimidating or cold if they're unaware of how they affect others. Reds hate inefficiency. If you're disorganized or vague, they'll either take over or check out. How to spot a Red? They speak loudly and confidently. Use strong, definitive language. Let's go. Do it now. I want results. Often take leadership roles, even in informal settings. How to work with a Red? Be direct and respectful of their time. Present solutions, not problems. Avoid emotional appeals. Stick to facts and results. Red behavior can be frustrating if you're sensitive to tone or conflict. But remember, it's not about aggression. It's about urgency. They want momentum and progress. The more you prove you're action-oriented, the more they'll respect you. Part 4. The yellows, charismatic, creative, and always on. Yellows are the people magnets. They light up rooms, thrive on connection, and make life feel like a party. Where reds are task-driven, yellows are people-driven. Their motto? If it isn't fun, why bother? Yellows are imaginative, expressive, and emotional. They love new ideas and possibilities. They're amazing storytellers and have an almost magical ability to inspire those around them. Typical traits of yellows: enthusiastic and optimistic, highly social and relationship-focused, creative and spontaneous, excellent verbal communicators. But they also have weaknesses: easily distracted, poor with follow-through, overpromise, underdeliver. How to spot a yellow? They dominate conversations with humor and stories, use expressive body language and animated facial expressions, are naturally persuasive and optimistic, even in tough situations. How to work with a yellow? Start conversations warmly, build rapport before jumping to business. Keep things engaging and avoid overwhelming them with details. Let them express ideas, even if they seem impractical at first. Yellows can struggle with discipline, deadlines, or critical feedback, but they're incredible visionaries, motivators, and team builders, especially when paired with someone who brings structure to their enthusiasm. Working with a yellow means embracing creativity, encouraging brainstorming, and injecting energy into the task at hand. Part 5. The greens, calm, consistent, and conflict-averse. Now, let's meet the greens, the quiet strength in the room. Greens are the most common personality type and often the least noticed. They don't crave the spotlight. Instead, they bring stability, patience, and loyalty wherever they go. While reds charge ahead and yellows shine bright, greens provide the emotional glue that holds teams and relationships together. They're not flashy, but they're deeply reliable. Typical traits of greens: friendly and accommodating, loyal and dependable, slow to anger, quick to forgive. Great listeners who avoid conflict. But don't confuse their calm for passivity. Greens have inner strength. They just express it differently. They're relationally driven and often the first to offer support when someone's struggling. Their weaknesses? Resistant to change, avoidant of confrontation, struggle with assertiveness and decision-making. How to spot a green? They rarely interrupt or dominate conversations. They prioritize group harmony. They speak gently and prefer one-on-one discussions. How to work with a green? Be patient. Don't pressure them into quick decisions. Show appreciation for their loyalty and support. Avoid confrontation or abrupt changes. Explain why and ease into transitions. Working with a green means creating a sense of psychological safety. When they trust you, they're incredibly committed. They might not be loud, but in times of stress, greens are often the ones quietly holding everything together. Part 6. The blues, detail-driven, cautious, and consistently correct. And finally, we arrive at the blues, the analytical thinkers, the perfectionists, and the guardians of accuracy. Where yellows live in the world of ideas and emotion, blues live in the world of logic, systems, and standards. If you're working on a project and need it done right, call a blue. Typical traits of blues: methodical and cautious, focused on accuracy and facts, risk-averse and highly responsible, thrive on structure and planning. Blues are perfectionists in the best and sometimes worst ways. They'll triple-check their work, anticipate problems before they arise, and won't rest until a process is airtight. Their challenges? Tendency to overthink and delay decisions, prone to being critical of themselves and others, struggle with spontaneity and ambiguity. How to spot a blue? They ask detailed questions others overlook. They bring data, charts, or lists to conversations. They prefer written communication and clear instructions. How to work with a blue? Be prepared. Have your facts straight. Respect their need for time and precision. Don't pressure them to wing it. They value accuracy over speed. Blues might seem reserved or overly critical at first glance, but that's because they care deeply about doing things correctly. If you want reliability, depth, and quality, blues are indispensable. Part 7. What shapes our colors? Nature, nurture, and the mask. Erikson dives deeper than just labeling personalities. He explores where they come from. The color behaviors we see in people are shaped by a complex mix of genetics, upbringing, culture, and environment. We're born with certain predispositions, but life experiences shape how these manifest. A naturally bold child raised in a strict home might suppress their red traits. A sensitive child raised in a nurturing environment might develop strong green tendencies. And then there's the mask. Most of us have a core personality, who we are at our most natural and unfiltered. But what people see is often our adapted behavior, how we act in public, at work, or with strangers. It's the version of us that's shaped to fit the situation. This helps explain why someone might be quiet at work but outgoing with friends, or why a person seems confident in meetings but deeply insecure in private. Understanding the difference between someone's core and adaptive behavior gives us more compassion and patience. It reminds us not to judge too quickly. What you see might not be who they truly are. It might just be the mask they're wearing. Part 8. Everyone's a blend. Understanding personality combinations. Real people aren't pure colors. Most of us are blends of two or more types. This is where the model becomes even more useful and more nuanced. For example, a red-yellow might be a passionate entrepreneur, decisive but also charismatic. A green-blue could be a thoughtful, reliable support person who combines patience with precision. A yellow-red might be a high-energy motivator who leads with vision and urgency. Understanding these combinations helps you better navigate complex personalities and avoid making snap judgments. It also helps you adjust your approach in dynamic ways. When you know someone's blend, you can predict how they'll respond under pressure, anticipate their communication style, earn trust faster by matching their needs. Erikson isn't advocating for manipulation. He's promoting empathy. When you adapt your communication to someone else's wiring, you're not being fake. You're being respectful. Part 9. The Man Who is Surrounded by Idiots. At the heart of this book is the story of Stuart, a man who ran a company and believed everyone around him was an idiot. He dismissed entire departments, mocked employees openly, and believed anyone who didn't think like him was wrong. His company even installed a light above the entrance to signal when he was in the building, so people could avoid him. But here's the kicker. Stuart hired all those idiots himself. When the author asked him a simple question, who hired them? Stuart was stunned. It forced him to reflect on a brutal truth. The problem wasn't his team. The problem was his own lack of understanding. Stuart couldn't see beyond his own color. He measured everyone by his standards and labeled any difference as stupidity. But difference isn't stupidity, it's diversity. The moral of the story is clear. When you misunderstand people, they look like idiots. When you understand them, they become human. And that's the whole point of this model. Not to judge, but to learn. Not to label, but to listen. The world isn't filled with idiots. It's filled with different types of people who see the world in different ways. And once you learn the language of colors, you'll start hearing them everywhere and finally start connecting. Surrounded by Idiots is more than a personality book. It's a lens, a new way to see people. By using the 4-color model, you gain the power to transform conflict into cooperation, confusion into clarity, and chaos into calm. So next time you feel like you're surrounded by idiots, stop. Ask yourself, am I listening in their language or just speaking in mine? Because once you learn to see the colors, you'll realize you are never surrounded by idiots, just people you didn't yet understand.